Okay, we'll be doing another tier list video today. This time I will be ranking all 60 champion paths. That's 3 paths for each of the 20 champions, Monster Train 2 and Monster Train 1. This is for Covenant 10 and Titan runs. So, maybe if you play on lower Covenants, you might not agree with some of these things. But not everything holds up at the maximum difficulty. Some things maybe get a little better or more consistent. But this is going to be assuming Covenant 10 and Titans. I will have the logbook open this time. I did get some comments on my last tier list about that, so we can reference the logbook. Just a little bit of background. I do play on Covenant 10 Titans. I play rotating random, meaning I play... I basically just go through all the champions in a rotating fashion. So I'll go like Fel, and then Prince, and then up here to Phoenix, and then keep going, and I'll repeat with all the alternate champions. And I will do a random allied clan and a random Pyroheart. That is kind of what this tier list is based on. It's kind of about as most random as you can get. As most evenly random as you could get, I should say. You know, kind of making sure you're spreading all the champions evenly. Currently on a 29 win streak. I do occasionally reset. Try not to. So yeah, most of these resets. As you can see, I've been cycling between all the clans, so I do get a lot of different gameplay from all the clans in. And I also do have about 500 hours in this game so far. So all of this is to say that, you know, I'm not a pro or anything, but I do like to think I know my way around the block a little bit. So my opinions are, you know, based on experience, but at the same time I do still feel like I have a lot to learn in this game. You know, I still feel like I've only kind of scratched the surface in a way, even with only 500 hours so far. So maybe you find yourself disagreeing with a lot of these rankings. If you do, let me know in the comments. You know, tell me how wrong I am. You can do that. So let's keep the logbook open here as we discuss these champions. And back to the tier list. So, going over the tiers, I will say the top tier is the winner tier. These are champions that, generally speaking, if I see this path, I will be quite confident I'm just going to win. I think that they're probably powerful at all phases of the game, or maybe, you know, maybe not super powerful at some, but powerful enough that they'll get me through without too much issue. In the next tier, I have Smooth Sailing Early, which is basically champions that can really get you through the early game without too much trouble, and they'll be able to get you advantages that you can kind of leverage and into a win, even if they might, you know, maybe they'll fall off a little bit, or they just don't have the ceiling as the higher tier, but they're good enough that they'll carry you early on, and you'll be able to put something together by the end of the run. The next tier I have kind of the opposite, as can carry but weak early. So these are champions that might be a little bit more dicey in the early game, but if you can get out, you know, kind of get your sea legs under you, these champions will probably just carry you and be your run. I do value the early game a little bit more because there's just more variance in the early game. There's just less things that you can see, less decisions you can make at that point that will help you. So early game is more of a mixed bag. So the powerful early game, I rate a little bit higher than the powerful late game. In the next tier, I have Splashable / 1 Point Wonder. So these are basically splashable. By splashable, I mean they're good as like a mix and match path, like, you know, how you have 3 points into each champion path. Maybe in this champion path that is in this tier, I don't necessarily want to go all 3. It's only really good as a 1 point wonder, or maybe I can go 2 points and then something else. But it's kind of just also a tier that I'm going to put champions in that are just sort of fine. You know, not ideal. They're like, maybe if I see them in my Ring 1 Forge, I'll say to myself, okay, fine, I'll take it. I didn't see the thing I wanted, but I'll take this one. And it'll be fine. And then maybe in my next Forge, I'll see the one I want. But if I take this one now, 1 point in it, it'll be okay. Or it's just champion paths that have really only need to go 1 point into is also in this category. You'll see what I mean kind of when we get more into the rankings. Then the category below that is situational. These are ones that can work, but I find myself wanting to avoid because it's just sort of, you don't really know if you're going to see what you need to see to make these work, or maybe you don't have the right opener that you can feel comfortable taking them. They can work, but they require a lot of work to get off the ground, or they require certain cards that you don't know if you'll see or not. So these are ones that are a little bit less consistent, and ones where I prefer to do something else. And then lastly, we have the don't pick. I just think these are just the bad paths. These are the ones I really wouldn't recommend ever taking. That I don't think they're really strong enough in a lot of situations to be of any use, and if you're going to pick them, then most of the time you're probably just going to throw them away. You can win with them, sure, but it's not going to be because of them. You're just going to probably throw them on a random floor to die, and then you'll be doing something else on another floor. Okay, so that was the explanations. Going to be going in order from Banished to Hellhorned. We'll mix it up between Monster Train 2 and Monster Train 1, alternating to keep it a little more interesting. So first we have Fel. I will just kind of go through all of the paths for each champion at once. So for Fel, the first one is the Vanguardian path. This is multi-strike and revenge. Apply Valor 4 to friendly units. And then Unchained. So I'll go over the stats too. It's 2x2 and 20 HP, and then it just goes up by 10 HP at each rank and 1 attack. Then we have Unchained Fel, which is multi-strike and shift, gain 1 Valor permanently. And then goes to 924 and then 932. It's a weird progression of stats. I kind of never really paid attention to that. The important thing for this one is that the third rank, at 75 Valor, you gain multi-strike 1. Now keep in mind it says at Valor 75. The actual permanent Valor that you have on her doesn't need to be 75 to get that multi-strike. I've had plenty of runs where I didn't quite have 75 yet, but if you can get to that 75 during battle, she will gain the multi-strike. And the last one is Savior, which is multi-strike. It's a 5 attack 20. They all have multi-strike, so 5 attack 20 HP, 10 attack 30 HP, and 15 45. With ability Savior. Savior says advance, gain Valor 5, gain armor equal to 1 times Valor. And then Savior 2 is Valor 15. And the important one for this one is that Savior 3, it's the same amount of Valor, Valor 15, but it applies that armor to all units on the floor. Okay. So, Savior is the armor to all units on the floor, and advance and give herself some Valor. I'm putting Savior in the winner category. I do think, and I think I'm somewhat in the minority here, I do think that this is her best path. It's generally just very strong. It's a very good tank, it's very good floor-wide survivability, and it's a good way to give herself some armor and some Valor. You can't really go wrong with it. You know, I think that Fel just having the innate multi-strike is very strong. She doesn't have the highest ceiling, but I just think that when you take this path, you're almost certainly going to win. I would say the same thing about Unchained, honestly. Unchained, the thing is, maybe can make an argument for here, but I think usually she's strong enough that you're not going to be kind of really too weak to win in the early game if you take Unchained. I think you can always get away with it. You might have to make some sacrifices by not taking the trial or anything. This one definitely scales more and is more of a natural carry and less of a natural tank. So, kind of depends on what you want. I think I do prefer to go Unchained when I have a stronger start because it scales better, it's more fun in my opinion. But not always, right? Let's say you don't find an answer to the Savagery Seraph Sweepers or Corruption, then maybe that extra armor from Savior is really important. But Unchained is probably going to be more straightforward carry. Both are very good. I feel like you can't go wrong with either. As for Vanguardian, I would say this one is more situational. So the problem with Vanguardian is that she doesn't actually have that much HP. And she has the Revenge proc. So she wants to be the tank and she wants to survive, but she doesn't really have that much HP on her own. She's also competing with several Revenge tanks in this clan. So it's kind of awkward. And those are really kind of the two best units in Banished. Those two, where are we? The Avenger and Firebrand. These are like the two best uncommon units in Banished. So she's kind of competing with them, and she's just strictly worse than these other two. So I would really never take this. You can. It's definitely workable, but I just don't really see many use cases for this. The only real thing I could think is that maybe in some kind of Pyre of Dominion start, you don't have any shift and you're only offered Unchained and Vanguardian, and for some reason you're still weak early game, then like maybe. But usually with Pyre of Dominion you're not weak early, so you don't need to worry about that. I would just say there's not really any reason to take this, but it's not bad. It's not like that bad. It's just so much worse than the other two. Okay, moving on to Talos. Talos has the ability Flight. Cooldown 2, and she can just move to anywhere on any floor. That's very useful. All the paths have it. It's useful for overstacking. It'll also trigger shift on all of your units, and trigger shift on her, which is useful for this path. So let's get into the paths here. Battle Cleric 1520 goes up to 2550 and has Resolve. Apply Valor 2, 4, 6 to friendly units. Celestial Radiance is a 1520, goes up to 4060, and it has Shift. Apply melee weakness 1, 2, 3 to enemy units on the floor. And then finally, Enchantress Celebrate triggers after defeating the boss. Apply +2, +6 to all friendly units on all floors permanently. That goes up to 410 and then 1020. And then her stats are 612, 816, 1426, but that actually is kind of fake because she's also going to be getting those stats from the Celebrate, so her stats end up being a lot higher than that most of the time. So, what do I think about these? So this is Battle Cleric. This is the Valor path. I'm going to put this in Splashable / 1-point Wonder. You really only want to take this. You really only want to take this on Ring 1 when you're too weak to take the other two. When you kind of feel that you're not really going to make it through the early game if you take the other two, and you just feel like you have to take this one, then take it. The problem is it scales so poorly even when you have a lot of overstacked units on the floor. Even if you have like 7 units and you're applying, Valor 6 to all of them, it's really not that much. It's really not like a great scaling plan. It doesn't scale very well. You really only want 1 point into it in the early games just to get by. And it's fine for that. Then you ideally want to be going into one of the more greedier ones after that. Celestial Radiance, this is the melee weakness one. To Typically, I'd say you want to flex into that one if you start Battle Cleric, or if you're strong enough, you can just go all 3 points into the melee weakness path. So her shift trigger works when she moves, so she gets it every other turn, and she applies melee weakness 3 to everything. If you have other ways to shift, which you don't have Just Cause as a starter card, but there's plenty of ways to shift in Banished, you can get some crazy melee weakness down. Like, this is a path that can just like one-shot the endgame bosses. It scales crazy out of control. It's one of the craziest scaling champions in the entire game. You can get like, it's like melee weakness 3, you shift her for melee weakness 3, and then you get like a rising rage that double shifts if you ascend something on the floor. That procs her twice, so now she's melee weakness 9 on something, and then you can use like a Steadfast Crusader if you have that on the floor, and it's like, I don't know. You can see situations in which she's just applying like 18 melee weakness to something and just like one-shotting Seraph practically. It gets pretty crazy, but yeah, the thing is, you do really have to watch out for that early game. Even with just one melee weakness on one hit is usually not very much, because your units don't have much attack yet, so just having one melee weakness is not really that impressive in the early game, and her stats aren't really great. If we go back to her early game stats, 15-20. Yeah, you can get her onto your floor for free. You can get a shield steward, a spear steward, and then or whatever your unit is that you started with, and then her, but it's like she's just 15-20. Her starter card is really not very good in my opinion, so it can be weak early. You gotta watch out. If you have a weak early game unit, really consider not taking this. But I would try to flex into it later if you start a Battle Cleric. And then Enchantress, the Celebrate path, same thing for me. I would say that the Enchantress path is probably the weakest in the early game, because if we go back to the stats again, 6-12. I mean, that's just pathetic on Ring 1. That's just basically nothing. And it doesn't even do the melee weakness, right? In Ring 1, this champion does literally nothing. It's even weaker in the early game, and to be honest, it's also weaker in the late game, technically. But the thing is, it might have a stronger mid game, and it also is more straightforward to play. If you can get this off the ground, you can just add a ton of stats to your units, namely health. I mean, it does give some attack as well, but just the super high health is like enough to keep all of your units alive forever. Just having all of those free stats is just going to carry you through most phases of the game pretty easily. Like I said, we touched on those tanks earlier, those banished tanks that really, really like having those extra stats, particularly that health. It makes the game very easy if you can get those celebrates in. And the important thing, too, is that it's fun. It's by far the most fun path. The permascaling is always fun. But it is very, very weak early game. You really have to make sure that you're going to be able to get out alive if you take this. But we'll carry you if you can. Okay, so that is all of the Banished. Let's move on to Hellhorned. So we have the Hornbreaker Prince, Brawler, 6/6 with multi-strike, armor 10, gains multi-strike 2 and armor 15, gains armor 20 and multi-strike 4. We have Reaper, 36, slay 15 attack, 60-12, gain 25, 120-24, gain 50. And then Wrathful, 15-15, slay, gain armor 10, revenge rage 3, goes up to 40-40, slay 25 armor, revenge rage 6. Goes 10, 15, 25, 3, 4, 6 for armor and rage. Okay. For Brawler is generally the path that you're looking for. I'm going to put it here again in the can carry but weak early. So going back, 6 by 2 with 6 plus 10 HP. So it's basically a 12 attack, 16 HP unit if you don't have any scaling in your opening deck on Ring 1. That's pretty bad. That's really worse than a Spear Steward generally. I mean, it is quite a bit worse. This is another one of those you really got to make sure that you can get through the early game, otherwise you might have to not take it. It is the ideal path. It's going to be the most straightforward one to win with, because you get that 5 multi-strike, you get some rage on him, he can just delete everything in the late game. But you gotta watch out, if you have no scaling in your opening deck, you have to maybe consider not taking him. For the Reaper path, which I will put in Splashable 1-Point Wonder, this is kind of the same thing, where if you're too weak, you just take Reaper. He's 30 attack and 6 HP. You do have to do a little bit of math to get him kind of slaying sometimes maybe in the early game, but even with just 1 or 2 slays in the first ring, stick a spear, or what is it, Shield Steward in front of him, he'll carry the fight. It was just 1 or 2 slays. He'll be at 60 attack, 45, whatever. He will get you through ring 1. I don't really like going more than 1 point in him. Usually when I do, it just means I'm going to end up throwing him away. I really would prefer to flex into the Brawler. If I can go Reaper 1 and then Brawler 2, it's at least 3 strikes on him. If you go to Brawler 2, it's 3 multi-strike. So that's the ideal. If you start Reaper, you really do want to get into that Brawler. And if you don't, I honestly end up just throwing him away a lot of the time. It's just 1 big hit, which is often there's just better things you could be doing in Hellhorned. But maybe not always. I mean, he is 1 very big hit. He has 120 attack at his highest rank, so you can find a use for him, but ultimately he's mostly just here for the early game, I'd say. That's just a 1-point wonder kind of guy. And last we have Wrathful. I wouldn't pick Wrathful. I think this is a really, really weak champion path. Recall that it has the revenge effect, but it only has 15 HP. And he needs to get a Slay in order to get that armor. If you just take like a invasion trial on ring 1, you're just going to die immediately, pretty much. He needs to actually slay something, but the problem is he doesn't really have much attack, and he gets hit for rage 3. The problem is that you might find that fight that's like, we'll see if I can find it, that is a fallen champion. There's one fight in the that you can get on ring 1 that's these guys, fallen champion on Covenant 10, they have 65 HP. And then behind them, there is just a single healer. Somewhere. There it is. Yeah, this one, the Ominous Acolyte. It's just that champion with the healer, Ominous Acolyte behind. And then it's just like 4 waves of that. So basically, he will be getting hit 4 times. So he'll get a total of 12 rage, which is like 24 attack. He won't kill anything, because he's not even getting anywhere close to 65 attack, and you'll just die. He also needs to be in front too. So yeah. So this is kind of just death a lot of the time in the early game, and then even in the late game, it's just way too fragile. I mean, 40 HP, it's not surviving anything. There just isn't really any reason to take this champion path, in my opinion. It's just so weak. Don't ever take this, in my opinion. Just doesn't really do it. There is some fun stuff you can do with like spikes or something. If you have like a sharpening starter, yeah, I mean it can kind of work, but also not really still. I mean, with that, again, that 65 HP big tank plus healer fight, that's just 4 waves of those guys in the early game. You won't live that fight. So we would definitely not recommend that one. Now we have Shardtail Queen, Imperade, 30-15 up to 120-25. Resolve, add a Queen's Imp into your hand, imp units cost -1 on the floor. Then that becomes a Fledgling Imp, which is the Rage Imp. and then it becomes a Fledgling Imp and a Welder Helper, which is the Armor Imp. And then we have Royalty, which is Rally whenever you summon a unit on the floor, gain 10 attack, 15 attack, 25 attack, and it goes from, so it has 10 attack at all ranks, so it goes 10, 20, 40 in HP. And then we have Imperialist, which is kill all imp units on action on the floor, deal 20 damage per imp to enemy units. And then 10, 20, 20, 40, and it goes up to 40 damage, and then 50, 80, and goes up to 60 damage. Okay. So Imperialist, this is the one that deals damage for each imp unit that she kills whenever she acts. Don't take it, in my opinion. It's just not very good. She's just not tanky enough. You need a steady supply of imps. Again, she does have imps as her starter, right? The Queen's Impling, but only has 5 in the deck. So you have to do an Endless Imp or something, and putting an Endless Imp just on her floor is, one Endless Imp is just going to do 60 damage, which is not good. And then she's just going to die because she's sitting in front. You can put like a quick dagger on her from an arm shop, but that's still just not even that good. Like, she's not useless, but she's just not really doing anything. She's just very weak. It's just not doing enough, in my opinion. Imperade. One last thing, I guess I didn't talk about this enough, but I would say even in the early game, I mean, maybe even especially in the early game, it's just very weak. 10-20 is a pretty pitiful stat line. Yeah, it's going to clear out the waves for you, but she's just going to die. So it's the type of thing where it's like you do need to make sure you have a very self-sufficient unit starter that'll get you through the early game if you do, for some reason, want to pick this ring one. Because even in the early game, she's not strong. She's definitely not strong later on either. So Imperade's weird to rank. She doesn't really super fit in any of these categories. I think she's the best path generally. I'm going to put it in Splashable 1-Point Wonder. I think you can, at the very least, a lot of the time, get her up to just the point where she gives you the Fledgling Imp, which is Rage 5 to all units. It's not that useful, but it's some kind of scaling plan. It's doing something. So, and then if you get it to the highest, it is reasonable just to make a floor of imps and just put her in the back and just summon a bunch of imps in front of her and just try to keep that floor alive in the late game for as long as you can. I mean, it's not useless. It's doing something. I mean, Queen isn't a very good champion overall. This is probably her best path. It's doing something. It's probably the best in all phases of the game. You know, even in the early game. 30 attack. Okay, 15 HP is not a lot, but 30 attack. You put a bunch of imps in front of her. She can at least do a lot of damage to the boss. And there's Royalty. I'll put Royalty in Situational. Royalty is the best when you have a unit starter as your secondary clan. So Dregs in Melting, Assistance in Lazarus, or Bloated Whelps with Pyroborn. Or Eager Conscript, of course, is actually the big one. The big one is actually Eager Conscript, yeah, in Under Legion. So in those situations, I'd say this is the best one, because you have a constant supply of rallies. She's going to be doing more damage than Imperade is. I think that it's like okay if you have that. You know, I think the best way to do it as the run goes on is just to kind of just summon as many things in front of her as you can to keep her alive, and then maybe have some kind of permafrosted or holdover ascend to just get her on your main floor after like the floor starts falling apart. So just try to rally her as much as you can and then like ascend her onto the floor. That's typically like the best use case for her. Except for when you have the Eager Conscripts for Under Legion, you make those big mushroom stacks. That's the best case scenario for her. Then you can just use that mushroom stack tank for her and she can just be a one huge hit. give her like Void Armament or something, and she can actually do some decent work. You still need to give her Multi-Strike or Trample somehow. Like I said, like Void Armament or something like that. Or somehow get like a Umbra Stone from like a Cavern event. It's still like not really that amazing, to be honest with you, but it's fun. I've done it one time I've done it, and I got her up to like 4,000 attack. Not even joking, like 4,000. Like, it can get really crazy. Obviously, a lot of that's just Under Legion doing crazy things with spawning, but she can definitely get pretty strong with any kind of rally. But even so, it's still just not that strong because she's very low HP. You need to play her in the back, and she only hits once. So, and it's not good if you don't have any kind of unit starters other than your imps. It's just not doing that much. It's like okay. If you see Royalty and Imperialist in your opener, you should just take Royalty. But, yeah. Okay, so that's all of Hellhorned. Next up we have Phoenix. Overlord path. Phoenix is a 3-space champion. I'm going to talk about this. Everyone else has been 2-space. Phoenix is our first 3-space champion. That is very important. So Overlord 2025 up to 4045 with ability Phoenix Fire and Slay +1 attack permanently. So Phoenix Fire is 3 cooldown, deal damage equal to this unit's attack, apply Pyrogel 4 to enemy units. Phoenix Fire 2 is now explosive, which means that damage splashes. So if this Phoenix has 30 attack and you hit something with the ability that has 5 HP, 30 minus 5 is 25, so all other units on the floor will take 25 damage. And then Phoenix Fire 2 is just 2 times, or Phoenix Fire 3, I'm sorry, is 2 times Phoenix's attack to the unit and explosive. And also the Slay goes up to +2 attack permanently, up from +1 from the other ranks. Then we have Golden Crown, which is a 1530 with ability Phoenix Fire. And that Phoenix Fire stays the same forever. So that's the same as this Phoenix Fire. It just applies Pyrogel 4 and does Phoenix's attack to a unit. And it has Conjure. Gain 1 egg. I'm pretty sure this is the only unit with Conjure in the game, but basically Conjure is just whenever you use an ability. So you gain 1 Dragon's Horde. At rank 2, goes up to 2045. You gain Dragon's Horde and 15 gold. And then 2 Dragon's Horde and 25 gold, and it goes up to a 3080. Finally, we have Pyromaniac. Again, base Phoenix Fire every rank, but when a unit gains Pyrogel, it gains +1 stacks, and it goes with 2, then 4. Stats go from 2030 to 4060. So for Phoenix, in my opinion, is not a very good champion. A lot of that comes down to the 3-space, like I mentioned. It's just so hard to get Phoenix onto the floor with your other stuff in a way that's productive. Phoenix just generally doesn't have powerful enough effect or enough stats to really justify being 3-space on your floor. With that being said, I think that Golden Crown is the one that I'm looking for the most. I'm going to say that it's splashable 1-point wonder because it kind of is. It's just kind of the one that I'll just take this every time. I'm generally just always looking for this one because it's like the, well, at least it does something path for me. If you even just take 1 point in it, it gives you 1 Dragon's Horde, and that's the important part. Yeah, you get some money in rank 2, and then rank 3 you get 2 Dragon's Horde, but even just the 1 egg is enough that I will, a lot of the time, get out of whatever else I'm doing on him and just flex into this. because a lot of the time my game plan is just not going to involve Phoenix, and at least this one will get me an egg or maybe two before he perishes on a floor where he's alone, because I can't fit him on my main floor because he's 3 space for some reason. So Golden Crown is the one that at least does something, and it's not bad. I mean, 1 egg is like fine. You know, if you get 2 eggs in a fight, use the ability twice. It's not nothing. I mean, it's pretty good. Eggs are good. I mean, they give you a lot of value. Build up your Greed Dragons. Your Greed Dragon, which is also 3 space and can't fit on the floor with him. Another thing I don't like. Yeah. So this is the one I'm generally looking for. Pyromaniac, don't pick this one, I would say. I just don't think that he's doing enough. Plus 1, 2, 4 stacks of Pyrogel every time it's applied. I kind of talked about Pyrogel a little bit in my units tier list, but Pyrogel to me, in my opinion, is something that you generally can't really build around unless you have Magma Cultist. So the only situation that you'd want to take Pyromaniac is when you start with Magma Cultist. But the problem with that is that you now have Pyromaniac, Phoenix, and Magma Cultist on ring 1, and that's just very weak. It's just not doing enough. You're not drawing enough spells. Your deck isn't refined enough. I think a lot of the time you'll take Pyromaniac with your Cultist on ring 1, and you'll be excited to get all your Pyrogel on the boss. The boss comes into the floor with your Phoenix and your Cultist, and you draw 2 Spear Stewards, 2 Shards, and like 1, like, what is it called? Fire Starter. And you have like 1 spell. And you get like 5 Pyrogel on the boss, and it's like, well, guess I'm dead. So even in his ideal situation, he just doesn't really work. It's just way too weak. I guess maybe it's something you could theoretically flex into. Maybe it is something you can theoretically flex into. Maybe I'm being a little too hard on it. Here's, like, maybe what I'm thinking is you start Golden Crown and then you find the Cultist afterward, and then you see Pyromaniac. But here's the problem with that. Here's where I'm talking myself out of it again. He only has 60 HP, and he takes up 3 space. So your Cultist is 1 space, Phoenix is 3 space, that's already 4 space taken up by all this. You're going to need some kind of like Smidgestone tank in front. This is just kind of asking a lot, like a Smidgestone Titanite tank in front, and then, yeah, that's just kind of asking a lot from you. It's asking you to solve too many problems, I feel like. Ultimately, I would say just don't pick this one. I just really wouldn't recommend it. It's just pretty weak at all phases of the game, I find. I do have it at rank 3 in my logbook, so again, I have tried it, and I've just been very unimpressed with it. I'm sure you could make it work, but I just don't think there's any reason to take it. Finally, Overlord, I'm going to put in situational. Overlord can be very fun. You know, he can kind of just solo the game. It can happen, but it frequently doesn't. The problem is that he's very weak in the early game again, because he doesn't have that AoE effect until the 2nd rank. So he's kind of just a 3 space ping for most of the early game, and he's not doing anything. So he's very weak in the early game. He takes time to scale up, and he has 3 cooldown. So even if you do want to make him your game plan, if you have like Savagery Pyre, you get a Bloodthirsty Blade, great. He's still 3 cooldown, so you can't like solo the game with him, because you have to figure out how you're going to deal with 2 out of 3 waves. Now you can give him like a Mind Cage, but then he's still at 2, and you still got to figure something out for the other waves. So you basically need like the Pyroborn Tome. We'll go over this. I should explain this a little bit more. So Mind Cage is one of the things you're looking for. But again, resolve reduce cooldown by 1. So it only reduces it by 1. So it's still at 2 cooldown. And then, oh, we're still in uncommon, so it's a rare. So it basically means you pretty much need this Tome of Contracts. or 2 of them if you don't find Mind Cage. The only other option you have is this Pyroborn Brain Spike, but this only works once. Or you have this Taskmaster's Lash. Whenever you damage your own unit. So generally the only way that Phoenix has to damage himself is with Firestarter, which means you're applying Pyrogel to yourself, which is really bad. I guess workable, but yeah. And then the only other thing, the attuned manacles, but the problem is that you don't have bloated whelp, so attuned manacles is way harder to make work. It basically doesn't work. And then, there's like some fringe stuff you can do like that. Like, all of that is like asking a lot, I feel like. Where are we with rooms? Hall of Mirrors is another one, but again, it only makes 2 of them. And then it's going to be the only thing on the floor, so you're going to have to figure out a way to keep it alive in that instance. It's just asking so much from you, I feel like. It's like so hard to get the pieces to line up. It's like very like combo-y, and like it needs so much to get it going. It's not that undoable, but the thing is, a lot of the time I just find that I find something better than Phoenix. Every time I go this Overlord path, I just end up finding something better to do that's asking way less of me. Like, yes, this guy can solo the game, and I have had him solo the game before. If you find some way to get his cooldown down to 1 every turn, and then he's just like exploding everything, yeah, I mean that's very fun, but it just doesn't happen that often. The pieces just don't kind of come together, or something else comes together before I can assemble the Exodia. It's very like Exodia to me. It's just not really worth, the juice is not worth the squeeze for this guy. So that's Phoenix. I'm really not a fan of this champion. I think he is actually the worst Monster Train 2 champion. He's not the worst champion. I would say like Queen is definitely worse, even though I did actually rank them all the same, funnily enough. Just realized that. I'd say that Queen is probably worse than Phoenix. I think that, there's maybe other Monster Train 2 1 champions that are worse, but in terms of Monster Train 2 champions, I think he's the worst. He just takes up too much space, and he has too little stats and not powerful enough effects to really justify being 3 space. Okay, so next we have Bloat Matron. Maybe I should go a little bit faster here. I'm already like 40 minutes in. Okay, let's go through Bloat Matron. Or not Bloat Matron. Have I been saying Bloat Matron? I meant Lady Gilda. So Guildmother, it has trample, 35-60 up to 100-150, 4 space on this one. And then summons Gilded, Gildeder, and Gilded Est Egg. This is basically a 5, 15, 30 HP unit that can't attack. It says it has 0 attack. It actually can't attack at all, even if you buff its attack. It just doesn't attack. It is a unit that retreats when it's summoned, so it goes to the back of the floor behind her. And it says celebrate, so whenever you beat the boss, you gain 2 eggs. Second rank, you gain 4 eggs and 50 gold, and then 6 eggs get 400 gold. Bloat Matron, 1045 up to 2100. It says harvest, apply Pyrogel 2 to enemy units. Whelps cost -1 on this floor. And then it goes up to 4 Pyrogel and 6 Pyrogel. Why is like the line, I don't know what to call it, but like why is it different? It says harvest, apply Pyrogel. Oh, there goes my dog. Anyway, wasting time. So that's that one, and then there is Lady Avaress, which is enchant, grant Avaress 5, so whenever units deal damage on this floor, gain gold equal to 5. Gain 5 gold whenever units on this floor attack. Important to note, she doesn't give it to herself. only to other units on the floor. So 30-30 up to 30-90. At the second rank, it's plus 10 attack on her per 100 of gold you start the turn with. So that will update during battle too. And it's plus 20 attack. And it goes up to Avaress 10 to units. Okay. Bloat matron again. Hate to do it. Don't pick this. It's 3 space. Again. Just not really doing enough. This Pyrogel thing is just not really... It just doesn't really add up enough, especially in the early game. You know, you can do this with, like, unit starters, again, like dregs and stuff, but it's... Or if you have, like, reforms, too. Primitive molds with your whelps is actually probably the biggest use case for this. You just keep reforming your whelp, and you get lots of Pyrogel. Okay, great, but it's like... It's still just not that good. And she's like basically going to be your whole floor, so like a whelp and her on the floor is already 4 space. So you basically need to take space in order to do anything else on the floor. And it's just like, it's like a few Pyrogel. It's just not that useful in my opinion. It's just not doing enough Pyrogel. Again, I want to reiterate that I think the only way to really make Pyrogel work is through Magma Cultist. It's the only thing that you can really accumulate enough Pyrogel with. Yeah, and she does get a ton of health. Like, again, she has 45 to start with, but very low attack at 10. And then at rank 3, it's 100 health. So she's pretty durable, but it's just not really doing anything in my opinion, especially when her other paths are quite good. Guildmother, in my opinion, is just a win. You just win if you play Guildmother. So this is the one that summons the egg. Basically, you're just going to play her top, and she's just going to sit there and protect the egg, and then you'll do other stuff on your other floors. So basically, she's 4 space, and the egg she summons is 1, so she's going to take up an entire floor by herself. You can play like a 1 space unit behind her at the beginning of the turn, so you can play like a 1 space unit, and then you can play her in front of that 1 space unit, and you know, she'll put the egg in the back and will overstack the floor, but usually you're just going to play her by herself on the top floor to protect the egg, and then you're going to be doing stuff on middle and bottom, and then she's just going to be cleaning up whatever comes top with her trample. So even in the early game, she's like 35-60 in stats. Let me just make sure I have that right. Yeah, 35-60. So that's a very strong stat line for the early game. She has trample. She's a pretty respectable stat line in the late game. It's not that high, to be honest with you. But she's just going to give you so much value over the course of the run. She's going to clean up threats through the early game that, you know, you can just always leverage a Guildmother run into a win. She's just going to give you so much throughout a run that it's just not... You're not really ever going to be in any danger. She's the strongest in the early game, and she's the strongest in the late game. She's strong in all 3 phases. I think I almost want to say that this is the strongest champion path in the entire game. I think that's a pretty hot take, but the thing is, like, the amount of value this champion gives you is just insane. I mean, she gives 2 eggs and then 4 eggs at the second rank, which is already enough to just cash out every other fight. And she gives 6 eggs at her last rank, which if any other egg generation, you're cashing out every fight. And then she gives 400 gold at the last rank per each thing. Which I guess is really just 1, because you're only going to get it after ring 7, but still, it's a huge amount of gold, huge amount of stats, huge value. Love Guildmother. Lady Avaress, I will say... I think Lady Avaress is like a can carry, but weak early. I do think she is a little bit weak early. She's not like that bad. The thing is, she is a 30-30 to start with. Where is she? A 30-30. Which is not like a great spread for like a 3-space champion. The amount of stats is like okay-ish, but the thing is, this spread is not very good. I would rather my 3-space unit have like a 20-40. I honestly think that if she was a 20-40, I would probably put her in here. But because it's 30-30, it's a bit weird. She is a bit fragile, so a lot of the time you're going to kind of have to like play her on her floor, and then you gotta like stick whelps in front of her to chump block throughout the fight just to keep her health topped off. So like you can't really greed the whelps behind her to get Avaress. You kind of have to put them in front just to keep her health topped up for the boss, and then you put the whelps behind. Of course, if you have like a good 2-space unit to put behind her, in front of her, or whatever, then that doesn't really come into play. But if your starting unit isn't great, or if it's a 3-space unit, then you have to do some funny stuff, and it can be a little bit weak in the early game. But this is another one that just ignoring the plus attack per gold effect that she has, she's just going to give you so much money throughout the run that you can usually just leverage it into a win. You just do have to be a little bit careful about the early game. So that is Pyroborn. Next up, the Sentient. Explosive, rejuvenate, deal 30 damage to the front of every enemy unit, so whenever you heal her, or she gets regenerated at the end of a turn, she'll do this effect. Then it's 60 and 120, and 30, 60, 120 for her total HP as well. Easy enough. Cultivating is Revenge. Cultivate 2, which is increase attack and health of the friendly unit with the lowest health. So whenever she gets hit, she gives +2/+2 to the lowest health unit on the floor. And she draws 1 each turn while she's alive. And then it's Cultivate 3 and 4, and it goes 40, 80, 160 HP. And finally, Bristling is Spikes. It just spikes 15, 20, 50, 40, 80, 150 HP. So Bristling, I would just say Bristling is maybe situational. It's like fine-ish. It's like doing stuff. Like, I almost kind of want to say, like, as a general rule, I would say just don't pick it. But the thing is, it's like, it's not on the level of bad that these are, in my opinion. It's still, like, fine. It's just that it's, I don't really ever see a reason to take it. It's just that the other two paths are just always going to be better, pretty much. And this is kind of redundant with what Awoken already wants to do, right? There's like Thorned Hollow in this clan that can get a lot of spikes. There's also sweepers that can clear out low HP backlines, which you want to do a lot of the time. So the Bristling Sentient just ends up being pretty redundant. It's just not really necessary, in my opinion. And the other two paths are just better. Cultivating, I actually think Cultivating is going in winner. We have a pretty nice spread here, by the way. Nothing in this category, 4 and everything else. I promise this balances out more as this goes on. I do have my reference tier list, and it is more balanced as it goes on. But anyway, Cultivating, in my opinion, that free draw is really nice, and then she's just going to keep the floor alive for so long. You know, she's just so tanky on her own, 40 HP, but, you know, she gets hit maybe like 10 times during the fight, which is going to be another 20 HP from her Cultivate. So she's like 60 total HP on the floor, and then like 20 attack, and it's like just a lot of stats on the floor, and then the extra draw is really strong for all phases of the game. And then she gets to 160 plus Cultivate 4. She just adds a tons of stats to the floor. Even if she's not part of your game plan, you can just kind of stick her on her own floor, and her Cultivate effect keeps herself alive for so long that she's just going to be a free draw for a huge amount of the fight. But even so, I usually just do use her as part of my game plan. I think that Cultivate effect is very useful for scaling up some of the units in this clan. You know, this clan does lack some good scaling options. So this is one way to get it done. So I really like this path. Really, really good tank. Free draw. I just pretty much always win with this one. And then Explosive. I will say that Explosive is the first one we're going to have here in Smooth Sailing early. this is going to be doing plenty of damage to clear waves in the early game. Just get those restores in, it just pops the frontliners, and then you have stuff to clean up usually. Sweepers or whatever will clean up. And it's 120 damage at the max rank, so she's not as good as Cultivating as a tank, but she still makes a very decent tank. And then that explosive damage is just a bonus. To be honest with you, like, yeah, when I take this unit, I usually just use it as a frontliner. It just has 120 HP that I actually have a reason to heal. That deal 120 damage is really nice to get on top of it. Usually she's just there as a 120 HP tank in the late game. That has a nice bonus. I just think that Cultivating is a little bit better, but this is still quite good. Okay, now we are off to Wildington. Okay, Thornlord is a 540 with summon, add 3 sting spells with frozen into your hand. Sting is just deal 12 damage to the front unit, draw 1 next turn. And it also has incant whenever you cast a spell on the floor, gain 2 attack. So that goes up to 3 attack and then 4 attack, and the stats go from 540 to 2100. We have Strangler with his sweep. Strike, apply rooted to the attacked unit. So it basically roots the whole floor. It sweeps the whole floor and hits everything, and it roots everything on the floor. 1040 up to 4090, and that's it. It just gains stats. Then we have Predator, which is quick, and enchant grants quick. So unlike Lady Gilda, Wildington does also have quick himself, and he enchants with quick. So he gives everything on the floor quick, and then he gets multi-strike at second rank, and then in a second multi-strike and 5 attack. So he goes from 20-30, 20-30 to 25-30, and 2 multi-strike and quick at max rank. We have another 3-space champion on our hands. You can maybe guess what I think about this guy overall. Predator, the quick one. It's a 1-point wonder sort of champion. You only want to take this with Strangler, so you go Strangler 1 for the sweep, and then you can get quick Predator 2 for the quick and a single multi-strike. And then you can be double striking with sweep and quick on the floor. It's a 3-space sweeper, so not ideal, but it still does the job. Going 3 points into this makes no sense. It doesn't really have the stats to justify it. It does multi-strike a lot, but I mean, it's just a very sad version of Animus of Will at full Predator. Which, if you look at Animus of Will, Animus of Will is 2-space. Yeah, less stats, but 2-space for the same amount of strikes. Yeah, it doesn't have quick either, but still. I mean, I think that realistically in the late game, the difference between 3-8 and 25-30 is like not really significant at all. You also can't give this guy upgrades. You can give Animus of Will upgrades. So that's kind of like full Predator is very sad and terrible, but as a 1-point or 2-point wonder, it definitely works. Next up we have Strangler. I'm going to say Strangler is the can carry, but weak early. Strangler is a bit more conditional. You know, again, you can go with the sweep and then 2 multi-strikes. And it can be a multi-striking quick sweeper that's rooting everything on the floor and making sure nothing walks on you while you scale. Again, it's very hard to do because it's 3-space, so it's a little bit clunky. And you do have to watch out for that root. Remember that the floors have a 7-space capacity limit in terms of how many units can be on the floor on each side. So if there's 7 enemies on the floor rooted, then the next wave of enemies that comes in will just go to the next floor if they can't fit. So if you're playing top, they'll go straight to the pyro room. If you're playing bottom, they'll go right to the mid floor past you. So you do have to be a bit careful with Strangler. You do have to make sure that you're actually killing stuff with him, or else you're just probably going to die. So you do need to find a way to scale him, which actually isn't really that easy with Awoken. Like I said, there just isn't that much scaling in this clan, so this can be trouble. But you usually can rely on your secondary clan to give you your scaling you need, and this can just be a win condition by itself. But it's a very situational. It's not like super situational, but he's kind of more conditional. And he isn't that strong early game. Like he does fit in the category because his 1040 stat line for 3 space is like not that strong. He's mostly just for clearing waves, and then you have to find some way to beat the boss in the early game. But he can be good. He can be your win condition. Then Thornlord, I'd say, is like pretty situational. That's situational being you took Strangler 1 and then you didn't see Predator at your second forge. And realistically, there's not really much of a point to going into full Strangler because it just gains stats. And it really doesn't even gain that many stats. Yeah. It's like barely... Yeah, it's 90 HP, I mean, which is a lot, but... That's pretty much the usage of Thornlord. The one thing that's nice about him is that those 3 stings he gives you in your opening hand is actually pretty nice to get that initial draw going. It's sort of like a lost luggage in a way. It can be very helpful. In the early game, maybe you want to save them in your opening hand just to get some damage in, but I think later on you just want to play those during deployment and just get your basically lost luggage effect. And that's basically it. I mean, it does, at the very least, give some way to scale your Strangler with those incants. You know, you'll get +3 attack if you go Strangler 1, Thornlord 2. You'll get +3 attack per incant, which is not nothing, but it's pretty sad compared to the Predator. So... yeah, he doesn't make a very good tank because I think this is what I was trying to do earlier, but I lost train of thought. He has 100 HP at max rank. Strangler is 90 HP. I mean, it's not even really that much less. So he doesn't really even function that well as a tank if you just go full Thornlord. So I used to really like Thornlord Monster Train 1. I think it was probably his most consistent path and the one I went most often, but now I think it's the worst one. Just not doing enough. Okay. Next up, where are we? Ekka. Everyone's favorite Ekka. Celestial Spellweaver has Conduit 6. With Incant, gain Conduit 1, up to Conduit 2, and then Conduit 3. Stats go from 15-8 to 25 to 35. 8 never gains any health. Silver Empress has ability Lunar Echo, which is a 2 cooldown. Create an ephemeral copy of a random spell played last turn. And it has 15 conduit during full moon. And it goes up, so it's a 15-10, goes up to a 20-15 with 40 conduit during full moon, and then 30-20 with 70 conduit during full moon. And then finally, Lunar Steward, Moon Cycle, apply 1/1 to friendly units on the floor, 2/2, 3/3, and it goes from 10-10 to 20-20. Ekka, I'm sure if you play Covenant 10, you're kind of aware of you're very familiar with Ekka. Ekka is not a good champion at all. I did say that Phoenix is the worst Monster Train 2 champion, but to be honest, I kind of forgot about Ekka. The thing about Ekka is that Ekka is actually good. Like, Ekka, you're way less likely to throw away than Phoenix. The problem with Ekka is that she's really, really scary in the early game because her stats are just so bad. Celestial Spellweaver, it has the potential to be your best path. I am going to put it in Can Carry but weak early. This is the Incant gain Conduit one. This can carry you completely, but it's extremely scary in the early game. And to be honest, it's not really super strong in the mid game at its second rank either a lot of the time. It takes a really long time to get off the ground, but when it does, usually just winning. Many times you just can't take Celestial Spellweaver in the early game, though. You will just get killed. So keep that in mind, especially with some of the really weak starter units that Luna can have, such as the 8 HP Lunar Priestess, or the 8 HP Astrologer is 10 HP, Nightingale's 5 HP, Selene Acolyte's 5 HP. They have really frail units, and Ekka herself is really frail at 8 HP in this path. So this can just get you killed. But it is very strong later on if you can justify taking it. Just be aware that, like, are you sure whenever you take this path? Because you will just die a lot of time if you take it. Lunar Steward. I would say this is more situational. Luna's a weird clan because it's like very combo oriented. Like there's so many like chicken and egg problems where you don't know if you're going to see the moon cycle stuff, but a lot of the time you just kind of have to take this path so you don't die in the early game. It is going to just give you the most stats in the first fight, and sometimes you just need those stats just to live that first fight. Even if you don't have any innate moon cycle cards in your deck, you're just going to need that to live. You're just going to need that initial boost just to make it out of the ring one. And then maybe you don't find any moon cycle, and then you just end up throwing her away. That's the worst case scenario. The best case scenario is that you do find a lot of moon cycle stuff, but I don't think that moon cycle is very good. There isn't really a whole lot of ways to actually activate it. Go to moon cycle. Oh, it's not moon cycle. It's phase. Meddler is the easiest way to do it. So you can start with this card and it's good. You generally want to give him like Endless, and then he gets his summon and his ability lets you phase on cooldown 2. But if you give him Endless and get him killed, you can do 2 moon cycles every turn. That's going to be your best way to do it. At max rank of Ekka, it's like 6/6 in stats to your floor every turn, which is just not really that good. But and then there's Lunacy, which can phase X times, but it's a very expensive way to phase. Of course, there is also Moon Ritual, which you can't, you don't start with Ekka, but you can get it with, again, our unit, Lunar Priestess, which is very good use of that too. You'll get a guaranteed phase every turn. But again, the amount of times you're actually phasing every turn is like pretty limited. You're not actually going to be doing it that much, and it's only 3/3 at max rank. Even in like the ideal scenario, I really don't think that Lunar Steward does that much. I think it's just undertuned. I think it just gives very low value most of the time. She also, the biggest problem with Ekka that I have not complained about yet is that she's 2-space, and she really has no business being 2-space. The thing about Lunar Steward is you want to get a lot of units on your floor because she's only buffing your floor, and she's 2-space herself. And there's like other stuff that you want to get on the floor. You want to get a tank, you want to get your like Fae and your, because there's a lot of good like Fae units, and maybe you want to just keep a Meddler on the floor or something. And it's like there's just so much stuff you want to get on your floor. You basically have to take space a lot of the time with this path, and I really don't like being forced into taking space. You know, there is ascend options in this clan, but they're not very good in my opinion, or descend. So yeah, I'm not a huge fan of this. I think it's just overall pretty undertuned. You can make it work, and I have, but a lot of the time you're just kind of taking this just so that you don't die in ring 1. And then finally there's Silver Empress, which is kind of the same thing. I don't like this path either. I think it's just not very strong. Again, a lot of the time you're taking it just because your only other option was Celestial Spellweaver, and I think this one is slightly better than Celestial Spellweaver in the early game. keep in mind that if you're on ring 1 and 2, if you don't have any phase to start with, that full moon conduit effect that she has, it will be full moon when the boss gets to the middle floor. So in ring 1 and 2, when the boss is on the middle floor is when it will be full moon if you don't have any phase in your deck. So you need to play on the middle floor. And that 15 conduit could come in handy. You get your spell back, and then you can maybe hit him with a couple of witch weaves or something. Maybe you played something good the last turn, and maybe you can damage the boss enough so that when he inevitably makes it to your pyro room, he won't kill you. Because the boss will be making it to your pyro room a lot when you have this champion. Yeah, I mean, I guess I do have her on average higher rated than Phoenix here, and I think that she is better than Phoenix, but she's a lot scarier. You have to really be careful in the early game. A lot of the time it means skipping trials, just doing whatever you can to make it out of the early game. But she's pretty rewarding. She scales pretty well with her Celestial Spellweaver path. Silver Empress can even be good at 70 conduit at max rank. Lunar Steward, in my opinion, doesn't actually even scale very well. It's just the best one in the early game. So yeah, I think Ekka is just generally undertuned. If you don't know what you're doing, you're probably just going to die a lot of the time on her. And even when you do, you might just die a lot of the time. But she can be very strong. Alright, let's move on to Ardoon. Ardoon has innate Mage Blade on all of his paths. All of his paths have Mage Blade. He gains attack equal to 2 times the conduit on the floor at base. Mystic Hammer has ability Shadowcast, 3 cooldown, it just phases to New Moon. And then he has 50 attack during New Moon. So he starts at basically a 60-30 during New Moon. He's 10-30 otherwise. And then he goes up to 100 attack with 25-45, and then he goes up to 150 attack during New Moon with 50-90. So he's basically 290 at max rank during New Moon. We have Battleborn Ardoon, which is Slay, permanently gain Conduit 1 on this unit. And he's a 20-12, and then he goes up to a 35-20 with Mageblade 4 in the same effect, and then Mageblade 6 in the same effect with 50-30 stats. And finally we have Hierophant. Incant, apply armor 2 to friendly units. Silent, gain double beam out. So Silent are a type of unit. Oh, we're already in them, yeah. This is a Silent, this is a Silent, this is a Silent. So then it goes, yeah, 20-20, 30-30, 50-50, 2-3-4 armor in an AoE. So for Battleborn, this is the Slay gain Conduit 1. This guy can carry, but again, very weak early, 20-12 stat line. He doesn't have any Conduit to start with, so you do have to be careful with him early on. It is fun to gain all the Conduit, and he does get pretty out of control with that 6 Mageblade at max rank. You do generally need to find some way a lot of the time to give him like multi-strike or trample or something if you want to make him your plan, but you also don't need to. I mean, even just all of the conduit that he gains could be really useful as like a sort of like a pseudo 2-space moon pixie kind of on the floor. He at least will do something. You just have to be careful because he's really weak early game. Hierophant, I think Hierophant is like just a 1-point wonder. Just the effect of gaining armor on Incant is useful. I don't think going from 2 to 4 matters that much with it. It's just useful to have the effect at all. I think it's a pretty useful one to just take as a 1-point. I have taken it as full max rank, but it usually just isn't necessary. You'd probably just get more value out of flexing into something else. And I rather wouldn't start with it, even though it is like better than Battleborn to start with and a weaker start. If I see Mystic Hammer, I do think it's better. So I think this is a smooth sailing early. Again, It's just a 60-30 at rank 1. It's just a huge ball of stats. And then it's a 290 during New Moon at rank 3. So just a big ball of stats. Again, it's not soloing the game for you or anything. I'm not really confident that I'm going to win when I see it. But it is just a useful big guy to just get you through the early game. And you'll usually find something good with Luna. Luna is more of a late game oriented clan, so just having this guy can really help a lot. I don't think he's like a free win or anything though. I think overall Ardoon is like a pretty solid but not really amazing champion. I think he's pretty well designed and cool looking. So I do like him, but he's not like amazing. Okay. Moving on to the Stygian. Chillwind Tethys, 15, 6, 39, 60, 12. Strike supply Frostbite 15, 25, 50. Conduit as Conduit 2 innately damage spells cost -1 on the floor with 10-5 stats. Conduit 4 -2 on the floor, 27 stats. Conduit 12 -3 and 49. And then Handheld Totem has Sweep and Strike apply melee weakness to the attacked units. 10-10, spell weakness 2, 20-12, spell weakness 3, 30-15. I really like Tethys in this game. So that Frostbite from Chillwind Tethys adds up a lot. Smooth sailing early, I mean, she'll just kill the boss for you. No problem. You just stick her behind a Shield Steward. Play her bottom floor, she's just going to kill the boss. The idea is to play her bottom and then just kind of get that Frostbite ticking whenever the boss moves up on every floor. It gets the one Frostbite proc and it just keeps going as it moves up. But a lot of the time, you're just going to kill a boss on the bottom floor. I mean, that Frostbite adds up really fast. You'll be surprised at how quickly you kill a boss with Chillwind Tethys. Really good boss killer. Usually not one I'm like super relying on later on, but it can really matter actually. But this is at least going to get you through the early game. No problem. I think the same is true for Handheld Totem, honestly. It's a little bit more frail, but... Well, actually, it's not a little bit more frail. They're all frail, but it's doing less like of a big hit. But if she can just get like 3-ish hits on the boss, and then the boss moves up with 3 spell weakness, you hit it with like a Titan's Gratitude, Crypt Gold, or whatever, you'll just one-shot it. Or just a Frozen Lance will be lots of damage with all the spell weakness. Takes out waves for you with ease. It says sweep, but you can't upgrade it. I'm maybe talking myself into this more splashable. I'd say it is more of a 1-point wonder just because of that sweep. Yeah, I think so. It's good actually to mix with Chillwind. I think the thing with Chillwind is you either want to get all Chillwind or you're going to want to get 2 Chillwind and 1 point in Handheld Totem. Handheld Totem is good though. It almost feels weird to just put it in the same... No, I think it's fine actually. I think it's fine here. I think I changed my mind. I think Handheld Totem is here. I don't think Handheld Totem will be carrying you, but that spell weakness really goes a long way. Just playing her bottom floor, sweeping, taking out the backliners, and then applying melee weakness to the heavies. Or not melee weakness, spell weakness. It's just going to be a ton of value. Really good utility. Only problem is the sweeper is that you can't upgrade her. You can give her a quick dagger, but she's not really going to be your carry as like Handheld Totem is the thing. But she's good to just like have 1 point of with Chillwind. Then there's Conduit. I would say Conduit is more situational. It's just not really doing much. In the early game, it's a 10-5 with Conduit 2. Damage spells cost -1 on the floor, so what, your Frozen Lance is and like maybe one other card. Conduit 2 is like nothing, very weak stats. She has only 1 space. I didn't mention that. That's one of the few 1-space champions, which is really nice. It doesn't really mean anything in the early game that she's 1 space, but it can start to matter later on. But anyway, back to Conduit. It's just doing very little in the early game. It does do a nice job in the late game with that 6 conduit, and damage spells cost -3. You know, you can just incant forever. You just play a bunch of big heavy spells with conduit for little, for only 1 space on your Tethys, but it's just so weak early game, and to be honest with you, I don't even know if the payoff is really that high in the late game. I would rather just take one of the other 2 paths. It's probably even good to mix with Handheld Totem. I just don't think it's really doing enough, and especially in the early game, it's just not good at all. It's very useless in the early game. Let's move on to Soulguard. Soulguard, Dire Channel, Incant gains Shard, so all of them have Incant gains Shard. So for Dire Channel on action, deal 4 damage per shard to the front enemy unit. So if you have 10 shards, it'll do 40 damage to the front unit. Then it goes up to 8 damage, and then 16 damage, 10, 20, 40 health. Cold Channel, Revenge, apply Frostbite 1 per shard to all enemy units on the floor. So if he gets hit 3 times, he'll put 3 Frostbite on everyone. And then same thing for the second rank, and then it becomes Frostbite 2 at the third rank with 25, 50, and 70 HP. Finally, Titan Channel begins with Stasis. So can't attack and can't be damaged until at 4 shards remove Stasis. So it's a 60-60 at rank 1. After you get those 4 incants in, you have a huge unit. And then it becomes 10 shards to remove it for 120, 120, and then it becomes 15 to remove it for 250, 250. Cold Channel. I'm putting Cold Channel in situational. I really don't like this. It has a very high payoff. It's like, maybe you can make an argument for the fact that it maybe can carry, but I think that the situations in which it can carry are just so rare. The thing is, this unit is just so fragile for what it wants to do. 25 HP is nothing in the early game, and then 70 HP is probably even worse in the late game. You need to find some way to keep this thing alive, but the problem is that a lot of the survival plan that Stygian has is like Daze and Sap. The biggest problem with Daze and Sap is that if you Daze something or Sap it to 0, it's not going to attack Soulguard, so he's not going to get his Revenge proc off. So the entire defensive game plan in Stygian directly is at odds with this. And then if you don't do all those things, well, he's probably just going to get one shot because he's very low HP. If you find some way to keep him alive, like if you somehow have ways to give him like tons of armor or tons of reanimate or something, then yeah, he will carry the game. You stick him bottom, he'll do tons of frostbite to everything. I think I kind of misstated how it works actually. So if he has 3 shards and he gets attacked by 3 enemies, he'll do 9 frostbite to everything, right? So you can see how that quickly adds up at frostbite 2. If he gets hit 5 times and he has 20 shards, then it's like 200 frostbite to everything. It's just going to delete waves. But you have to figure out some way to keep him alive, which is a lot easier said than done. I just don't find it useful, and especially in the early game, he just dies. I mean, he just dies so quick in the early game. You really need to start with like some kind of like armor or something like that to reanimate in order to get this guy to work. He's situational. He can carry, but he's too situational for me to put in this tier. He's just way too situational. Dire Channel. I think Dire Channel is more of like a splashable one. I should probably talk about Titan Channel first in conjunction. You generally want to mix these. So Titan Channel, I think, is the much better one to start with because you just get a 60-60 unit and you only need to incant 4 times to catch him. That becomes much trickier at 10 shards. You need to get 10 incants to hatch him at 2nd rank. You get a bigger unit, 120, 120, but it's way harder to hatch him. The problem comes when the 3rd rank, you need 15 shards to hatch him, which is, in my opinion, is just way too big of an ask. It's way too hard to hatch this guy at the 3rd rank, in my opinion, and I think that it's only really very feasible in like some kind of weird situations where you have like infinites going with what is that card called? Where you have the either Deep Offering to draw tons of cards immediately, or Gifts of Regard or something like that. The thing is, if you have those infinites online, you're going to win anyway. So in my opinion, in most cases, getting 15 incants to hatch this guy is just way too much of an ask. So you're going to need to flex him into Dire Channel most of the time. I guess you could do it with Gold Channel as well, but it's pretty low value. But it is doable. I don't know, it's very weird. It's like 4, 10, and then 15 shards. So you need 4 shards to hatch him in the 1st rank, and then you need to get 6 more in the 2nd rank, and then 5 more in the 3rd rank. It's weird scaling, but even so, I think 10 is doable, but 15 is not. Unless you have Founding Seal, you know, the artifact that lets you get double incants. That's like the only way to get this to work at max rank. And the payoff is definitely good. I mean, it's good. It's like a, what, 250, 250, but that's not like that insane, right? It's not. It's definitely very good, but it's not like super crazy. It's just like a big tank. For how much you need to do to get there, it's like, it's not really that worth it, because a lot of the time you're just not going to get it in time. Even if you're playing him top, you won't get enough incants, and he won't be hatched by the time the enemies come up to the top floor. And then Dire Channel, in my opinion, like I said, really only that useful as like a flex from that. So like 1 point wonder. It might even be worth it to put him in situational. But I think it's fine. I think you can do 3 points into it, honestly. It's like a 1 big hit, which is like okay. You know, 16 shards, you get like 20 incants, it's like, what is that, like 320 damage? So like 20 incants throughout the course of a fight is like not, you'll probably get more than that even, but like he'll do a decent big hit. You do need to put him behind something, and or I guess, you know, the big thing is that Sap and Daze does work with him. So I guess you don't need to put him behind something, but the thing is he only gives 1 big hit, so he's not like doing that much. He's not like super valuable, but he's fine. He's like fine to have around. I'd say a whole big problem with Soul Guard is that this whole incanting thing is like a lot worse in Monster Train 2. Because you need to invest basically all of your resources onto his floor with the incants. And you really don't want to do that in Monster Train 2, because you're having multi-floor setups a lot more often. So incant strategies are just generally worse. I actually kind of really hate Soul Guard in this game. I think he's a really weak champion. I think even maybe putting some of these in like this tier is like generous, but I really don't like him. I think some of my closest, scariest runs in recent memory were like all with him. He's really hard to make anything useful come out of him. He's really only good with Titan Channel in the early game, and then he just falls off after that. He's pretty much weak at all phases in the game, except for the rare circumstances where you can get Gold Channel to work, actually. I really don't like Soul Guard, which is a shame, because I used to like him a lot, but I think he's just fallen so much in this game. Anyway, that's my rant out of the way. Bloat. Bloat, Headsman has Trample and Slay. Friendly units propagate 1, 2, 4, 30, 20, up to 130. Executioner has Harvest, gain Regen 1 and Rage 2. 15, 30, goes up to Regen 3 and Rage 4. 30, 100. Headsman, oh no, I said Headsman. Hiveminder, I mean. Rally, 1 attack permanently. Up to 1 attack, 1 health permanently. Up to 2 attack, 2 health permanently. 15, 25, up to 35, 45. Okay. Executioner. This is the Harvest path. situational. I have made this guy work, but he's very weird. He's like pretty tanky at like 100 HP. You know, if you get some harvests in, he's a 100 HP tank in the late game with a lot of regen, and he's like staying alive. I have had that happen, but it's weird because a lot of the time you want to be tanking with your mushroom stack, your eager conscript mushrooms, so the regen on him kind of becomes wasted. Like the harvest comes from those regen, or from those mushrooms. Get those mushrooms killed, they do proc the harvest, and he gets the regen, the rage. But the regen is kind of wasted on him when he's not in the front, so it doesn't really make any sense. And then the amount of rage he gains, rage 4 per harvest, it's like not really that much. He just kind of becomes like a one big hit champion, and there is a one big hit champion path for this champion that is much better than it. He can make like a better, decent tank maybe, but if you want him to be the tank, it means you're not playing the mushrooms and he's not getting a harvest from them, so it's very weird. I don't know. It's a weird path that it's just not very powerful in my opinion. It's definitely like okay-ish in the early game, but if I do end up taking this path in the early game, I just end up throwing him away. I should probably talk about Hiveminder first. Hiveminder is the big... This is the one you're looking for every time. Hiveminder is the rally one. He gains permanent stats. He just becomes one big hit. Yeah, you just want to get those permanent stats in. You do a bunch of rallies, get a big guy. He is 3 space. A lot of the time you want to take space in this clan anyway, because they have a lot of units that compete for space, but that honestly kind of makes things harder for him because this clan is already like has so many things competing for space on a floor that 3 space is a big ask for this guy. His big problem as this path is that he's just still one big hit. So you're going to need to give him trample or multi-strike or something like that to really get him going, to like clearing waves and stuff. He is very strong. Like he'll definitely get you through the early game, which I like. The only thing I don't like about him is that he has a tendency to fall off later on if you don't hit on like anything. Particularly the thing you want to hit on is the headsman path. This is a 1-point wonder. The trample with slay, gain, propagate. The slay effect really doesn't matter at all. It's all about the trample. It just says trample on it. It's the one you want to flex into when you have Hiveminder. You do lose a little bit of that permascaling if you only go Hiveminder 2. You don't get the +2/+2. You only get +1/+1, but it's well worth it for that trample. It's a way to actually make him much better at clearing waves rather than just wasting his big hit on a single tank and then you know, you don't have anything else to clear the rest of the enemies on the floor. The ideal setup for Bloat is Hiveminder 2 with Headsman 1. Don't really like the executioner path. I have made it work before. I think particularly with like melting dregs and stuff, but it's very weird. It's just not that powerful in my opinion. So that's Bloat. Let's move on to Madame Lion's Mane. Everbloom says incant spawn 1. Then its second rank is Etch, so whenever you consume a card, it gains spawn 2, and then Etch spawn 4 from 5/10, 10/15, 20/20. Maneater has ability Maneating, cooldown 1, which is important. It is cooldown 1, so you can use it every turn. Applies Sap 2 and Decay 5 to a unit. Maneating 2 applies Sap 3, Decay 10, and Mute 1 to a unit. Maneating 3 is Sap 4, Decay 15, and Mute 2. Stats go from 25/10 to 65/20. And finally, Spore Singer. Action, apply Decay 1 to enemy units. When a unit gains Decay, gains +2 stacks, +3 stacks, +4 stacks. 8/16 up to 20/40. I really like Lion's Mane Everbloom Path, winner in my opinion. This is really good with like Spore Launcher. It's a really consistent way to get spawns in. She is, ironically enough, better at spawning mushrooms than Bloat is with his starter card that says spawn a mushroom. Because all you need to do on her floor is play a spell and she spawns something, and you're going to be playing spells every turn. So this path is better at making a mushroom stack than Bloat is. It's a big payoff with like I said, Spore Launcher, or it can just be a big chump blocker if you're doing other stuff. Especially if you go 4 points into or 3 points into this. It means you're doing some kind of etch thing, and it makes a really good tank for your. I should bring up these cards too. Spore Launcher, really good with that rally, or Moral Mistress with the etch if you want to go 3 points into it. I will say that I actually like Everbloom 1 just as a 1-point wonder, but it's not that it's like okay as a 1-point wonder. It's like it's amazing as a 1-point wonder. If you just get 1 point into it, it's already done its job. Just get that spawn in, makes a huge mushroom stack, and then you flex it into something else is the important thing. That's the big thing, is that you already get the incant spawn 1 effect with just 1 point, and then you're free to do one of the other two, particularly Maneater. Maneater is the big payoff. It's the one you want. It's also going in the highest tier. The thing about Maneater is that it says mute. That's the big thing about Maneater. You get the mute at the second rank, so you only need to go 2 points. So you go Everbloom 1, Maneater 2. In my opinion, that's the ideal Lion's Mane. I think that even Maneater 3 is great though. It just gives you more of the debuffs, Sap, Decay, Mute. Great. And it has high attack. Not that important, but this ability is extremely strong. All that Sap, Decay, Mute just turns off bosses in the late game that mute. One of the few sources of mute in the entire game, and mute is really good. You can propagate all those debuffs that Maneater gives. You can turn off a unit with all the sap and mute, and then a decay can kill backliners or whatever. Or you can just contribute a lot of damage to the bosses. Really like those two paths. And then for Spore Singer is the only one. I would put Spore Singer probably in like Splashable. It's okay. Maybe it's like Smooth Sailing early. Yeah, I guess I can put it here in Smooth Sailing early. Because it is good. It's just that I wouldn't really take this one ever, is the thing. It's weird. I'm putting it in the second highest tier, but I basically would not really ever start with this one. I'd always want to start with one of these two, because they're just better in my opinion. I think the only situations in which I take Spore Singer is when I start Everbloom for that incant, and then I don't need the etch effect. I don't really have like an etch thing going on, and I don't get offered Maneater as my other choice at the second forge. In that situation, I'll just take Spore Singer. And it's like fine. But a lot of the time, it's just not really doing that much in the late game. That decay is just... It says apply decay 1 whenever unit gains decay, gains 2, 3, 4 stacks. So basically it's doing decay 5. I mean, it's decay 5 to everything, which is 15 damage, which is just... It's not really that useful. It's like fine. At the second point, which is where I typically take it with Everbloom 1, it's decay 4, which is 12 damage, which is... it's just not... It's not really doing that much, but it's pretty good in the early game. I mean, if you take this, you'll definitely make it through the early game. It's very strong for that, but I just don't really ever see any reason to take this when these other two paths exist. Really like her, though. Really, really strong champion. Next up is Umbra with Penumbra. Architect says summon, gain 2 capacity on this floor. That goes 3-4 capacity, and he is 3 capacity himself, so at max rank he will give you an extra capacity on the floor for playing him. He goes 25-20 up to 140. There is Monstrous, which says Trample. He takes up 4 capacity. He goes up to 5 capacity and 6 capacity with 50-30, 125, 60, and 250, 120 stats. Finally, we have Glutton. He starts with Lifesteal 2, 3 space, says Gorge, 4 attack, 2 health, 9 attack, 4 health, 15 attack, 6 health. And he is a 20-20 stat line the entire time. Important to note, he stays 20-20 at base the entire time. Architect, for me, is situational. I generally only really take Architect as like a flex. I'll leave it there. As like a flex when I take Monstrous. Just as a way to kind of get the space that I need. The thing about Monstrous is if you go 3 ranks into Monstrous, it has 6 space, which it makes it unplayable if you don't take space. So you kind of have to flex into something else a lot of the time. Unless you took space, which maybe you did. Monstrous, well, let's finish talking about this. He basically just gives 1 space at max rank, so he basically just becomes a free 100 attack, 40 HP unit that gives 1 space to your floor at max rank, which is like, okay. It's like decentish value. It just feels like a waste when there's just so many other things you could be doing with him. I think the other 2 paths are just better. I mean, he's definitely like free, quote unquote, but he's not really that strong in the early game. He's like, what, 25-20? Not really that amazing. Nothing to write home about for 3 space. Well, he's really 1 space at first rank, so that's definitely something, but it's just a free ball of stats. It's not that big of a ball of stats. He's mostly just there as a flex for Monstrous. Monstrous, I will say, Monstrous is smooth sailing early. You give him morsels from your Shade Splitter. He has 4 space. He's going to clean up waves early on. You know, he has 50 attack. He's going to be very good in the early game. You know, there's generally lots of ways to keep him alive. He has a lot of stats. He's definitely going to do a very good job for you at first. You're probably going to want to flex into something else, but he's a strong early game champion, as is Glutton. Glutton is the one I prefer a lot of the time. It's much bigger stats. It generally gets a lot bigger. Gains 4 attack, 2 health. So it needs, what, 32? So 8. So it needs 8 Gorges to eclipse what Trample is doing. Which maybe in the early game isn't happening, but for 15 attack... I'm trying to do the math here. What is it, another 15 Gorges? Which a lot of time maybe you will be doing that, but he's also still only 3 space the entire time. So he's kind of just a 1 big hit champion, which is, I guess, his biggest weakness. But you can flex into 1 point of Monstrous. These 2 are very good together. The biggest thing you have to watch out for Glutton Penumbra is that he has 20 HP the entire time, like I said. So if you play him top floor, he's just going to get one-shot by Seraph or the Titans. If you don't have some way to keep him alive. With something like chump blocking with a morsel, or... which one am I looking for? Chain of Gems, apply damage shield 2 to the first unit summoned. That's a big one. Something like that. Or an intrinsic damage shield card. You do need to fix that problem. He starts with 20 HP, so he's just going to die before he gets to eat anything. But he becomes a very strong unit very quickly. He gets a ton of stats with both of these paths, which makes it your early game free. A lot of the time you do need to figure out how you're going to leverage that into the late game, and sometimes you won't. I mean, sometimes you do end up just throwing them away eventually, but they'll get you through the early game. You know, I wouldn't say they're like free wins like these, but they'll get you through the early game often enough. Next up we have Primordium, Superfood, Buffet 3, it means he gives 3 eats, and he gives his stats and his status effects to the eater. Then he goes up, he's a 310, and then he just gains damage shield 2 and then damage shield 4. Stalwart Sack has Buffet 5 and a 3-3, and he doesn't give his status effects, he just gives the stats. Buffet 8 and Buffet 12, 3-3 the whole time. Aggressive Edible, Buffet 3, same thing, just gives the stats, but has 15 attack and 3 health. Still Buffet 3, but 30 attack and then 60 attack. So with 3 eats, it'll be 180 attack at max rank, 45 attack at the first rank, to whatever he's being fed into. Okay. Aggressive Edible and Stalwart Snack, in my opinion, are both kind of... you don't want to fully path into them most of the time. They're kind of just there as an extra boost for... I should talk about Superfood first. Superfood is the one that will win you the game. It's the one you're looking for every time. It transfers all status effects to the front unit. So it gives Rage, it gives Damage Shield. You know, the ideal thing to do on it is, of course, the Perils of Production Ember Drain package. You just give this a bunch of Rage, give it a bunch of Damage Shield, Life Steal, Furnace Tap, Multi-Strike. That's a huge payoff. He transfers a Multi-Strike, by the way. Any status effect like Quick, like Trample, he transfers all of that. You know, Void Binding, great. All of that stuff he transfers. And keep in mind that does include debuffs as well. So he will transfer Sap and things, and melee weakness and things like that. So definitely be aware of that. But he is the real carry path here. You just load him up with a ton of status effects and buffs and everything. He just transfers all of that to the front unit. Void Armament is another amazing one, along with, like I said, Furnace Tap. Void Armament will give Multi-Strike to a unit, and when he gets eaten, it doesn't count as him dying, so it won't purge him with Void Armament. But any weapon really is good, because he will transfer the status effects from the weapon and the stats. He won't transfer the effect of the weapon. That is important to keep in mind. So something like a Bloodthirsty Blade. Well, let's say I have a Bloodthirsty Blade mixed with or merged with a Swift Steel Dagger. So it will, if I put this on my Primordium, it will transfer my attack of 4 and 15 of 19. It will also transfer the Quick. It won't transfer the Slay effect. It won't transfer this actual like trigger effect. It just transfers status effects. So anything that's yellow here, or any buff that's... Fragile is another one. It will transfer Fragile. So that's a good one. Yeah, but it won't transfer like a Resolve. It will transfer yellow stuff. It won't transfer Silence because it'll be Silence itself. So that's an interesting interaction. And then it will also transfer... I'm trying to find like a buff of some sort. Yeah, Multi-Strike. Something like Valor, a blue effect. I think it might be green for you if you're not in colorblind mode. It will transfer the blue, it will transfer the yellow, and it will transfer the red. It won't transfer red, it'll transfer that if you want to equip him with a Penitent's Death Suit for some reason. It won't transfer a Revenge trigger. Just any blue, yellow, or red square. Or green, not instead of blue. Anyway, enough explaining. I think a lot of people who watch this video know what Superfood does. I'm just explaining because I think a lot of people watch these videos that are maybe newer, so hopefully that was helpful. But anyway, Superfood, I hope you can see why it's the one you're looking for. And then not only that, it also does give you that damage shield for free. So with 3 eats and 4 damage shield, it'll give you 12 damage shield to your front unit. Or just 2 damage shield. A lot of the time you want to get like 1 point in Stalwart Snack and 2 points in Superfood. So Buffet 5, so that'll be 10 damage shield rather than 12, but it'll also give more eats for all your other buffs. Could also do 1 point and 2 points. I do like to do 2 just for that initial damage shield, but you can do that. You can also just do 1 point in superfood and like 2 points in aggressive edible just for that initial attack. 310 is kind of weak stat line. It's only 930 to your front unit, which is not nothing at all, but just if you want an initial attack boost too, you can take this. I really only take aggressive edible when I'm like, I don't see superfood in my opener and I have stalwart snack and aggressive edible and I'm really weak. If I take a buffet 5 for 15-15 on like a shield steward, that's not getting me through ring 1. I have to take this one because this will at least give me 45 attack. That's generally the situation I take aggressive edible, but you can also do like superfood 2 and just aggressive edible 1 just for some more initial attack if you don't need the more damage shield, or even just superfood 1 aggressive edible 2 works. Very splashable champion. You really only need the 1 point superfood for it to really matter, that transferring of status effects. Yeah, okay. Almost done here. Brewmaster. Ability small concoction, medium concoction, large concoction. All of these are 3 cooldown. First one says mix, second says mix twice, third one says mix 3 times. He goes from a 20-20 to a 75-40. Reanimator. Resolve, gain reanimate 1 and unstable 6. And then he starts with reanimate 1 on a second point, and then starts with reanimate 2 on the third point. And it goes up to unstable 12 and unstable 18. His stats also go up too, but that doesn't matter at all, really. He's going to die. You want him to die. So the stats don't matter. And he's not really attacking for anything. Mad Scientist. Incant, apply unstable 4 to enemy units. 8, 16. Has 15 attack at all ranks, goes from 25, 45, 70 health. Okay. So Brewmaster, I would say this is more like a situational one. That situation being, you just kind of feel like playing Brewmaster, I guess. Because there's not really any reason to take this, but again, it's not bad at all. It's not bad. It's just like fine. It never really feels that great to go like 3 points of Brewmaster. It's like, yeah, it's a lot of mixes, but I usually really appreciate that. But the other two are just so much more powerful that I don't really see a reason to do this. It's like a weird utility unit that you have to like play on some floor somewhere and then keep them alive. It's very doable. I mean, it's still pretty good. It's just that it's not really that, like, why would you do it? When you have Mad Scientist, I'm going to say smooth sailing early. The thing about Mad Scientist is that you're going to need to find some way to keep him alive, and also that on the Titan fight, this can get you into some trouble when you're applying unstable to the Titans. The way that it works is that in order for the unstable to explode on Titans, 2 of them need to have been killed already, or brought down to 1 HP. If you have, let's say, Savagery at 500 HP and 700 unstable on him, and then you have Entropy at 500 HP and 700 unstable on him, even though they're both over the threshold of unstable, they won't explode until one of them reaches 1 HP. It's pretty annoying that it works that way, and this is kind of the main thing that makes Mad Scientist kind of hard to work in the Titan fight. Like, you do need to be doing something else alongside of him, because when you get to Titans, he's not going to be enough, in my experience. But he will absolutely carry in the early game. He will for sure carry. Getting those unstable onto all units means they all explode for that unstable amount. So it adds up to a lot of damage quickly. He clears waves really well. He's not really a boss killer, though. Reanimator can be all of it. Reanimator is the best path for him, in my opinion. You stick in with a ton of reanimate, you stack more unstable on him. So like the big things with him, let's go spells. You want to hit him with an explosive reaction, maybe double stacked for 50 damage. That gets that unstable ball rolling on him. Get him with that secret ingredient or pseudoscience or forevermore serum. Get a bunch of reanimates on him. And then even the mixes can even give more unstable to put on him. You can also self-ping him to detonate him early and kill stuff. And then Tome of Horrors is the big one. That's the big one. If you find this card, it's definitely GG. You double stack this. It gives him 100 unstable and reanimate 2, which is doing 2 things he already wants to do. It's double scaling him. And yeah, you give this a double stack and -1 Ember, or you give it a remove consume and -2 in consume. You make a couple copies of it. You can also just do that with this though, or with your mixes or whatever. He naturally gains that that reanimate and that unstable. He'll gain a good amount of it and just clear waves in a very, very efficient way without needing to invest too much into him. With the Mad Scientist, you do have to figure out a way to keep him alive, but this guy, you want him to die. So this guy just keeps dying. The game plan is pretty much to stack as much reanimate as you can on him. Like I said, just secret ingredient, give it a -1 spell chain, maybe make a couple copies, and just keep fishing for green for reanimate. Maybe double stack spell chain this or something. Just keep stacking that reanimate on him, and he just explodes a ton. And he does more damage overall, I would say, than Mad Scientist does. He's much more easy to work with too, in my opinion. He has much better solo carry potential. He can actually kill bosses much more easily than this one can. This one is still good, the Mad Scientist. It's still very good. It's just that it kind of falls off later on. Okay, Baron Grail. Living Armory. Equipped. When he gains equipment himself, he applies 8 attack to all friendly units on the floor. And then it's 16 attack, 24 attack. 8, 10, 16, 20, 24, 40. Learning Limb, Artificer. So when anything on the floor is equipped, the attached unit permanently gains 2 attack, 4 attack, 6 attack. 15, 25, 30, 40, 60, 60. It hungers, has Devour, sacrifice an assistant, and gain their attack as a cooldown 1 ability. And then gain twice their attack on Devour 2, and then 3 times their attack on Devour 3. Goes from 10, 25, 15, 45, 20, 85. It hungers is the Devour one. Smooth sailing early. This guy can't even carry, but you can make a good argument for being here. I mean, I think you generally will just win with him here too, but I'm going to put him here for now. He's just a really big guy. I mean, he's just one-hit wonder. Not one-hit, wow. One big hit sort of champion. If you eat all of your assistants in the first rank, you have 5 assistants, they have 9 attack. It'll be 45 attack to him, so he'll be at 55, 25. And that's if you only have those assistants. And then at rank 3, he'll gain 15 times 9, which is 135. So he'll be at 155. 85 HP is a lot. He's just a really big dude. Who's just a really good way to get your equipments immediately as well. It's a nice bonus. He'll definitely carry you through the early game. He just has a ton of stats. Learning Limb, I would say, is more of a one-point wonder situational sort of thing. I don't like to go full Learning Limb, but I think that it's a decent flex with It Hungers. The important thing to note about Learning Limb is that it's Artificer, so that's when anything is equipped on the floor. So when you play your assistant has the equipment and it gets equipped on summon. So it will scale that attack on the summon, and then when it dies, you can equip the weapon on the floor again for another 2 attacks. So you're getting 4 attack out of every assistant in the first rank, and then 12 attack out of every assistant in the second rank. And then of course it works for any weapon, not just assistants. So you can get some powerful assistants with this, and those stats carry over. I'd say that you can get your assistants up to like 50 to 70 attack with this full path, and then you can kind of like play them as like 1 space 70 attack units, and you can kind of weaponize them. It's a bit weird. It's definitely a very weird path. It's kind of hard to navigate it and to make it work. It's one of those ones where it's not really worth it to me a lot of the time. The other 2 are just so much better, but it's definitely like decent to take it. Like early, I'd say it's good as like a 1-point thing if you want to be greedy, and then you can flex into something else. It's more of a splashable 1-point wonder one. I think it is like pretty good. I think it is generally better than most of these ones in situational, so I'm leaving it up here. But it's one of those ones again where it's like I don't see any reason to take it most of the time, but it is decent. Living Armory, I think, is the win. Very straightforward. He just gives a bunch of attack to everything on the floor. So, you get your 5 equipments. That's 40 attack to the floor if you equip all 5 of them on him. It's 120 attack to the floor. That's a huge number, right? I mean, you have your things like Plague Doctor, 120 attack, unstable. You get multi-strike, tons of unstable, tons of damage. Same thing with Test Subject Alpha. Only thing is he does take up 2 space, so he is a little space hungry, but he's absolutely worth it. Just a really, really fast way to scale your units. Don't just solve so many of your problems. He is weak himself, though. Like, his actual stats are pretty weak. 8-10 in the early game is definitely scary. If you're worried about your early game, I mean, that might be like one situation where you maybe want to take like Learning Limb. It is much more stats. That is definitely something to consider. It's the only thing, but it's not like that bad. It still just gives a lot of attack to the floor. You can just play him behind Spear Steward, and he'll just give a ton of attack to Spear Steward and himself on ring 1. 40 attack to each of them. So you'll be at a 48 attack Shield Steward and a 48 attack Grail. That'll get you through the fight. That's it. Yeah, that's it for Grail. So lastly, we have Rector. So Rector, Burn Bright is Burnout 3 with 50-50 stats. As you can see, I have never actually, I'm going to say in my 500 hours of this game, if you can believe it, I have never taken this. I do know generally what it does, though. I wonder if it's even worth it to just... Let me just pull up the wiki here real quick, just so that I can make sure what it does. Okay, so it looks like he needs 40-40 or 50-50 stats. So he gets to 100-100 on rank 2 and 200-200 on rank 3. Okay. Burnout 3 the whole time. Accumulator has Harvest +1/+5, 10-15 stats. It goes to +2/+10, 15-25, +4/+20, 30-50. Dark Calling. So Dark Calling has Resolve, reform 2 random units and apply an additional 10 attack. And it goes to 15 attack and 20 attack. 15-15 stats up to 50-50. Let's see, where are we? This one? Yeah. Too many tabs open. Accumulator. As you saw, I have never taken this. I actually don't think it's in the worst tier, though. I just think it's kind of situational. It's the type of thing where it's like I haven't taken it because mostly I just have never really seen a reason to. It's a bit weird. You can be kind of caught with your pants down on ring 1 because he only has burnout 3, and if you just bottom deck any burnout cards you might have, you just lose. Your 50-50 guy is just gone. So I think that actually you need to start with reform, like a molded, in order for this for him to be good. My opinion, you need to have like molded as your starter in order for this to be good. And then like maybe you need your unit to be like Lady the Reformed for the extra burnout. Those are situations in which I would take it. Where are we? Yeah. Those are the situations in which I would take it. Oh, I put the wrong one here. Sorry. Let's put this back here. Burn Bright. Goes here. I would take it in that situation, or maybe even if you just have the Lady of the Burnout as your unit, you can take it. It is definitely, probably the strongest in the early game. But I still think you're generally just going to be okay in the early game with the other two paths. And they scale better. Just going up to 100, 100, and 200, 200 is like not that good. Again, I don't have experience playing this path in Monster Train 2, so I am, I do have a bit of a blind spot for this. But in Monster Train 1, it was definitely the worst path. It just wasn't very good. They did buff it. I think it was like 150, 150 in Monster Train 1. But even 200, 200 is just not that good. It's just not. It's a big ball of stats. I think there needs to be some sort of payoff for the burnout. Like, burnout needs to, be weaponized somehow with this path. Because right now he's just a boring guy with burnout, who I don't see any reason to take. So, yeah. Accumulator. Accumulator, I would say, is more splashable. Particularly with Dark Calling, but you can put 3 points of this. I don't think it's very useful to do that. If you get lots of harvest with this guy, if you use him as your tank and you're getting all of the enemy kills on his floor, he can get very huge at the 3rd rank. He can get up to 1,000 HP easily. And then you can do something you can get equalizing rings on him and he becomes 1,000, 1,000. That's definitely better than 200, 200 for the burnout. Again, you do have to define this, but I think having 1,000 HP is definitely more useful. And then there's also, of course, very funny things like getting a shield of wing on him. He's just, I have done this, he just solos the game. Of course, those are the high rolls. I think overall he isn't that strong. Because again, at rank 1, he's a 15-15 that gains +1 attack and 5 health, which is just pretty low. The ideal thing to do is stick a bunch of dregs in front of him or a tomb to kind of get him going a little bit, but he's mostly just useful as a tank. His attack doesn't really scale. He's really only useful, super useful in the late game, I'd say, as just a way to keep Dark Calling alive. I don't think Dark Calling is going to really win you the game usually, but it's very good in the early game. It'll really get you through a lot of the game. It's kind of weird because it says reform 2 random units and then some other stuff. That's the champion. It says reform 2 random units. Whatever it says after that does not really matter at all. This attack is just nothing. It's not, the idea is maybe you just keep reforming stuff and that's your scaling plan and then you have huge units. That's not really feasible or easy to do. This is a very cerebral and thinky sort of champion. You do have to kind of learn how to play this one. It's very thinky. But just getting those reforms out constantly. The stats are actually meaningful. I did lie a little bit. They are meaningful in the early game. The stats are meaningful. They'll get you through the early game. It'll be a lot of attack on like your dregs. So they'll get you through the early game. And then he mostly exists after that as like a way to bring back like tombs and stuff. If you want to have stuff to like trigger harvest for his accumulator, plus like a Wickless Baron or something like that. Like this guy, you have a bunch of free units you can just keep replaying. Yeah, you bring back your burnout things that die. It's a way to reform stuff. It's very versatile. It's generally the one I'm always looking for. It's not going to like win you the game though, in my opinion. It's just a way that like it'll get you through most of the run if you play your cards right. And finally, Little Fade. Firelight. These are all 5/1s at all ranks, and they're all one space. So Firelight says extinguish, apply 5/5 and burn out 2 to friendly units on the floor. Then it becomes 12/5 and burn out 2. Oh, it's always burn out 2, yeah. 5/5, 12/5, 25. Eternal Flame says quick, endless, extinguish, gain 15 attack and 1 health. That goes to 30 attack, 2 health, 60 attack, 3 health. Little Icarus says spikes 5, slay, gain 2 attack, and spikes 2 permanently. Then it goes to 3 attack and spikes 3, and then 4 attack and spikes 4. Eternal Flame, this is our quick endless. I think I'm generally comfortable now where I think you'll just win when you get this one. This gets, very high attack and health very quickly. You just keep using it, at the first rank. It'll die every turn. It'll get up to like an 80 attack or 90 attack or something like that by the time the boss is around. And then you just play her behind your shield stewards to get as much hits with her in as possible. She'll take out heavies as the fight goes on. She'll take out the boss. She just provides a ton of free value, and she scales herself, and she's very, very easy to play at one space. And she dies easily. She's very low health, so she just dies and you just replay her. Very sort of low maintenance, high value champion that will provide just a ton throughout the run. And then you even get her with this resin block is a big one. Where a friendly unit dies, apply plus 10, so that'll get the scaling even more. And there's also Waxer Snuffer. Those are the big ones. Extinguish triggers an additional time. That's just generally good with Little Fade. That's good with 2 of these paths, but she gets really crazy with the Waxer Snuffer too. She's just a very self-sufficient unit that's just going to be doing a ton of damage to the boss or taking out heavies. Yeah, really like her. Firelight can carry, but weak early. You have to be really careful with Little Fade. It was always this way with Firelight. In the early game, a lot of the time you kind of just have to like sacrifice by not taking a trial. She's very finicky. You kind of have to play like bottom floor, and then you want to reform her. Here's her problem, is that she applies burnout 2 to friendly units. So she dies, she applies burnout 2, the turn ends, and then that burnout ticks down to burnout 1 on your next turn that units have. So you need to draw a reform. Primitive mold. You need to draw a primitive mold on your next turn to ensure that you can get her back and get that burnout continuing if you don't have any burnout cards. You really run the risk of your units just burning out, and then it gets complicated because now you burned out your units, and then Little Fade and those units are now in your reform pool, and you're reforming random units, so you have no idea what you're going to get, and it gets really messy. So stuff like -1 draw trial is like really bad for her. with this path. It's really scary. She's like a really scary early game champion. You really have to watch out and like really think if you want to take this over something like Eternal Flame a lot of the time. I usually just go Eternal Flame, in my opinion, just so much safer when you get offered both of them. But there's some situations where you just have like plenty of burnout or something, and you have like a Lady that reformed, and you'll be like fine. You'll have like a Molded in your starter or something, and you'll just be like fine if you get Firelight. But there's a lot of situations where it's really scary in the early game. But if you make it out of the early game and you just, you know, reform her like every turn, she's doing a ton of attack to your whole floor. At that point, you can just play whatever, any one space unit with her, or sweepers. She's really good with something, yeah, even like a Wickless Baron she's really good with because they procs the Harvest too. You can do it with this. This is even more scaling with a Paraffin Enforcer. Just make a floor of 4 Votivaries. I mean, it doesn't matter. Sure, you can do that. Tombs, whatever. And you'll win. Like, if you can make it out of the early game with this champion, you will win. And lastly, hate to end on a sour note, but don't take Glitter Licorice. If you don't know, this champion path right now, as I'm making this video, is bugged. If we go to that Slay path, Slay gain 2 attack and spikes 2 permanently. So she only has 1 health. So typically when something hits her, she's going to die. The problem is when she dies, she's bugged right now, so this Slay doesn't trigger. So it basically just doesn't scale. Here's a bigger problem though, is that even if it wasn't bugged, if you were listening earlier in this video, I did talk about that one combat that was just 4 of these and a healer. She won't get any slays in that combat. So you'll just die. So yeah, unfortunately, this champion path just didn't keep up in this game. I don't know what they'll do to address that, but don't pick it. So yeah, that is my whole tier list. Here it is. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Did you enjoy this? Do you have any disagreements? I'm sure you do. Let me know in the comments. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for watching, and that'll be all. Thank you.